21.3 Ergogenic Aids. So, ergogenic aids are performance enhancers that give you a mental or physical advantage while exercising or competing. This can range from caffeine in sports drinks to illegal substances, and it can also include pieces of equipment or sports clothing. Anyone can use them, and not all are exclusively used within sports. Some may be used by people in their everyday life. However, they play a huge role in the sporting industry and keeping competition so highly competitive and entertaining for spectators, as it enables athletes to keep getting better and better and to put on a better performance for the spectators watching it. They can be used for a range of different reasons. So you've got physiological, so that means giving you an actual physical advantage over other people. It might be speed, power, muscle mass, and it might involve using something like anabolic steroids. There's psychological, which is giving yourself the mental advantage over the competitors, and this could be something as simple as imagery, so imagining what you're going to do and then going out and performing in that manner. Can be used in training, so some ergogenic aids are used primarily during training and are used to help the athlete get the most out of their training session, such as a parachute for sprint athletes. And there's also recovery, so some are used for helping athletes recover more efficiently and effectively from their training session, such as compression type boots that inflate to help a person's leg muscles recover and enable them to carry on training just as hard the next day. They're not all good, and some of them are illegal and can potentially pose health threats, and there's a lot of issues regarding them, as some of them do just take the fun out of sport and can be considered cheating in a lot of people's eyes, and a lot of them can be quite expensive. So there's a number of key organisations that put in rules and regulations in order to control the ergogenic aids that are and aren't allowed within sport and the actual competitions. They have to do this for a few reasons. So to keep people safe and healthy is the most prominent reason, and also to keep the competition fair for all and give everyone equal opportunity to succeed within sport regardless of where they come from and how much money they've got. So WADA stands for the World Anti-Doping Agency. It was founded with the aim of bringing consistency to anti-doping policies and regulations within sport organisations and governments right across the world. So this organisation is responsible for athletes all over the world and works to eliminate the use of prohibited drugs in sport. And they've compiled a list of prohibited drugs in sports and enforce and encourage the elimination of these drugs to keep the sporting community as clean and fair as possible. They also focus on educating athletes and sporting professionals on the risks and dangers of the drugs, and they focus on science and medicine in terms of researching into the newest drugs that are on the market and the effects they can have, as well as finding new ways of detecting the drugs within the sports. The International Olympic Committee is also set on promoting and supporting clean athletes within the competition. So this involves investing a lot more money into the fight against doping and developing their testing methods. So they take the code composed by the World Anti-Doping Agency and they make it mandatory for all athletes wishing to take part in the competition. So for anyone who does go against that, there's often a 4 or so year ban on competing in the Olympics, so they miss out on the next one, and all the training they've done goes against them. And in a lot of cases, any previous records and medals they've won will be stripped or completely disregarded. UK Sport is a high-performance sports agency funded by the government that works to lead Olympic and Paralympic sport in the UK to world-class success. So this means that they have to promote and enforce the IOC's policies in regards to doping and the use of ergogenic aids, and support up-and-coming UK athletes with the knowledge needed in order for them to make informed choices about what they do and don't use, and to lead a cleaner sporting career, and to try not to lead them astray as well. So NGB's national governing bodies are responsible for creating the policies that are associated with their sport. So they'll use the guidelines of organisations such as the World Anti-Doping Agency and compose their own policies, which will state that ergogenic aids are and aren't allowed within that sport, and will also decide on the appropriate punishments put in place for those who decide to go against those policies. So there's different categories of ergogenic aids. The first one here is pharmaceutical. So these are things that will affect the chemical balances and hormone productions within the body. This might mean increasing the production of certain hormones, or it may mean decreasing or completely stopping the production of others. So one example of pharmaceutical ergogenic aid is human growth hormone. So it's a hormone that's naturally produced by the body in order to help regulate body composition, body fluids, muscle and bone growth, sugar and fat metabolism, and possibly heart function. And it's legally used in order to treat certain medical issues. However, some athletes will use it illegally in order to try and enhance their muscle growth. So this, in what we're talking about now, is the synthetic made version. So not the one that's actually naturally occurring in your body, but a synthetic substance that is injected into you instead. So it's primarily used by athletes competing in power sports such as bodybuilding, sprinting and cycling. And it can be purchased over the internet from anything from around £250 up to more than £600. This drug is very good for building muscle mass, and specifically lean muscle mass, which will enable them to generate larger forces within the muscles and so produce more power, which can give them an advantage in their events over other athletes. However, there are some nasty side effects such as nerve, muscle or joint pain, swelling due to fluid buildup in the body's tissues, carpal tunnel syndrome, numbness and tingling of the skin. It can increase cholesterol levels, and it can also increase the risk of diabetes. And because it works by increasing the growth of body tissues and cells, for any cancerous tumours or cells that are within the body, if you use human growth hormone, it's going to increase the production of that, so it's quite dangerous. It's prohibited both in and out of competitions by the World Anti-Doping Agency, and one of the huge reasons for this is the health complications that can be involved, and the fact that it just makes sports so unfair for other people who don't want to go down this route. So the second category is physiological. So physiological ergogenic aids are things that can change a person's physiology. So this might be by naturally manipulating their body so it responds in a certain way, such as altitude training, or it may mean physically adding or removing something to or from the body. So an example of this is blood doping. This involves removing blood from the athletes, keeping it refrigerated, and then putting it back into the body before competing. So this increases the amount of red blood cells within the blood, and that means it has a higher oxygen carrying capacity. So for this reason, many endurance athletes will use it as it means that they can continue to transport more oxygen around their bodies for a longer period of time in their event. And it's more so common within the cycling sporting community. It's only really available to people who kind of know about it, and people who have like connections, or people who are willing to do it, because it's such a risky thing. And not only the athletes who are found doing it will get in trouble, but so will the doctors and whatnot who are performing it, because it is actually quite dangerous. So its specific positive effects it has on the body is that it does enhance a person's aerobic capacity greatly, in the sense that it enables them to transport more oxygen around their bodies, and so their muscles can produce more energy and continue to work longer before reaching that OBLA. However, it can have many negative side effects, such as an athlete using his or her own blood can put themselves at risk if the procedure itself is not actually done properly and the blood isn't handled or stored in the correct places. And then unnaturally high red blood cell levels can increase the risk of heart attack, stroke and pulmonary or cerebral embolism. By refrigerating the blood, it actually makes the blood more viscous. So once it goes back into the body, the heart is having to work harder to push the thicker blood around the body. And it increases a person's blood pressure, and then that can lead to things such as heart attack and stroke. And it's illegal to use in all sports, as stated by the World Anti-Doping Agency. So mechanical ergogenic aids are essentially just a physical object that affects a person's performance. Often they're much safer and widely accepted within sport, as opposed to others which influence the body's chemical balances and physiological makeup. An example of a mechanical aid is a sprinting parachute. So these are used by sprinters and games players in order to aid in building fast twitch muscle fibres and increase their power in their legs to make them faster. So they're very inexpensive, they're around £30 to £75, and because of this they are accessible to all, or at least most athletes. They can be bought very easily online by anyone or in sports shops, and are good as they're so simplistic and easy to use with minimal knowledge needed in order to incorporate them into a training program. And the fact that they're made out of flexible material also means that they can be folded up and taken wherever a person wants to train. This piece of equipment is beneficial as it allows a person to build strength whilst maintaining their levels of flexibility, and it works on the muscles in the calves and quads, which means that more force can be generated from those muscles. It's also effective at every level, as the level of resistance is determined by how fast a person runs, meaning it can be used by every ability level. And it also gives people that mental edge over their competitors, because knowing that they're using an extra piece of equipment that someone else might not be, it kind of makes them feel a bit better, even if it's not actually helping them physically. However, some people might not feel confident enough to go out and use it themselves, and may not feel it's as beneficial as other pieces of equipment because of how minimal and simplistic it is. Another piece of mechanical ergogenic aid is a cycling helmet. So they're designed now to be more aerodynamic in order to minimise the drag when cycling, which will therefore lead to a faster time. So obviously they're used by cyclists both indoor and outdoor, and they're roughly like £100 or can be more expensive, and they can be bought by anyone wherever. Specifically, it helps reduce drag when cycling, making the person more aerodynamic and be able to move through the air more easily, and so that can decrease their time and help them beat their oppositions. However, it might only give very tiniable and not very noticeable improvements, and so if you've got someone who's able to afford a more aerodynamic bike as well as having a helmet, it's going to make them do a lot better than someone who can only afford the helmet. And a lot of them also cover a person's ears, so it prohibits them from hearing as well in their sports. So that's a bit of a negative and might put some people off. And it is currently legal in all sports, along with the parachute. Psychological ergogenic aids are essentially any techniques that support the athlete's mental state, and the good thing about them is that they're easy to learn and can be done pretty much anywhere. So one example of this is listening to music. This can be used for absolutely any kind of athlete, and also non-sporting people as well, regardless of the sport or situation. It can be used to heighten or subdue any kind of mood a person might be in, which is useful as it can be adapted to the different situation a person might be in. It's accessible to all athletes and doesn't have to cost any money at all, because you can pay for subscriptions for things such as iTunes and Spotify, but there's also things like the radio, which is free for anyone. An example of how it might help an athlete could be that if you've got an athlete who's feeling very anxious or nervous before a game or competition, they can listen to calming music that will help them to control the nervous energy they have and to compose themselves. And alternatively, if someone needs to increase their motivation, then they can just use upbeat music to get them hyped for whatever it is they're doing. So a lot of athletes will use music during training sessions, especially tough ones, in order to provide themselves with their added motivation needed to get them through the session. However, not everyone reacts the same way to different music, and so it can have the reverse effect. So if someone's already beaten themselves up about performance and then they choose to listen to sad, slow songs, it might just upset them further and cause them to feel worse and therefore perform worse. So it's all about finding the balance and finding out what works for different people. And this form of ergogenic aid is completely legal within all sports. So nutritional ergogenic aids consist of organic substances that are used with the purpose of enhancing sports performance. This can include anything from manipulation of the fluid, carbohydrates, fat and protein content in a diet, to nutrition or food supplements in the form of tablets, liquid bars, injections or powders. So they can be categorised into 3 different categories. So there's products that can enhance energy production to improve strength, speed, power or endurance. Products that can enhance performance by changing the body's composition, and products that may enhance recovery. So an example of this is whey protein. This is used by both athletes and non, as it's a good way to help with putting weight onto. So some people may find that they can add this into their everyday diet without being a sports person in order to help them to get to a healthier weight. However, it's often used more strategically by athletes in order to help them with their recovery from training. It's used by any athlete who undergoes any type of strenuous exercise, as it contains all 9 essential amino acids, which helps with the repair and maintenance of strong muscles and bones. It's very easily accessible. It's sold in pretty much all sports shops, health stores, and pretty much anywhere online, and it can cost anything from £10 up depending on the quantity. It's very good as it's absorbed by the body very quickly and so gets to work quickly after it's been taken. So it's often used within 30 minutes after exercising. And it enhances recovery for the athlete and increases their carbohydrate uptake, meaning that glycogen stores refill very quickly, meaning that they can then train again sooner. However, as it's actually produced as a byproduct, many additives are often added to the mixture in order for it to taste better for people. And then because of that, it's important to double check any additives that have been put into it to make sure none of those are prohibited and going to have any adverse effects on you. So this is legal, however, you just need to watch out for any additives and make sure the product has been approved.